Okay, so let's proceed. So today we're looking at a very important topic, which is on stigma. And we've got a few captions on here. And it's just about standing up against stigma to stop stigma. As we all know, there's no health without mental health. We have a short description of what we think stigma is. So the perception that a certain attribute makes a person unacceptably different from others, leading to prejudice and discrimination against them. Next slide for me, Cicely, please. Thank you. And this also shows about what mental health and stigma looks like. You can see somebody holding a plate over their face and saying, I'm an adult, I should be able to sort out my problems. It comes across as other things as well, like all women are a bit bipolar. You shouldn't have kids, you just pass them on issues, so selfish. Everybody has anxiety, some people are just stronger than you are. Therapy and medication are just scams and you don't need all that. What do you mean you can't get out of bed? It's not like your legs aren't working. Kids and teens can't have mental health illness. What have they got to worry about in life? Some other voices, mental health is just an excuse of life, of benefits, and not contributing to society. So some of those are just examples of what stigma might look like when it comes to mental health. Next slide for me, Cicely. Thank you. So statistics have shown that more than 60% of people with mental health problems or mental illness won't seek help if they need. Stigma is one of the main reasons why they don't. And that's why it's a very good, important topic for us to explore today and see what we think about stigma when it comes to mental health. Stigma is when people with mental health problems believe what is being said about their illness or about them publicly and agree with this view. This affects self-esteem, can lead to a belief that there's no point in trying, and may cause people to give up on life goals such as having a job, a long-term relationship, or even seeking help with their conditions. Okay, thank you, Cicely. So I see most people have joined now. So welcome. If you just join us, you're very welcome. What we normally do is go through a short synopsis of it done about the topic that we have at hand today. And to aid in our discussion, what we're going to do is we're going to do some polls and then we're going to start a discussion about stigma and mental health. So I'm going to launch the polls. Bear with me. Okay. So just to confirm, you can see my screen. Thumbs up. Or can I see my screen? Yeah. And thank you. And so I'll give you just a few minutes to fill in the polls, and that will aid in our conversation today on mental health and stigma. Thank you. Welcome everybody who's just joining. We have the polls in front of us. We're just taking the polls, which should just lead us to the next point of our conversation on our topic for today, which is exploring mental health stigma and self-stigma in our communities. See, most people the answers are coming in, which is good. Give it a few more minutes and then we can have a discussion. Okay. Yep. So just a few more. Oh, okay. Just waiting for somebody else to come back into the room. We'll just wait. We'll give a few minutes that people are coming in so they can settle in and take part in the conversation today as well. So welcome if you're just joining us. We're just at a point where we're doing the polls. Feel free to answer the questions in front of you, and then we'll proceed to have our lively conversations. As the rest of us are waiting for people to fill out their polls, I was just having a discussion with some of the staff in the office, and one question actually popped to mind is, at what point does stigma actually start? So as we're going to share about this topic today, I'd like also to know the views about at what point do you think stigma actually starts? Right, just a few more minutes and then I will end the polls. I think we've got everybody's responses. Okay, so I'm going to end the polls for now. And I will share the results. Thank you very much. And I hope you can see the results. So thank you for taking part in that. So we're just going to use these questions to just explore our topic today. So our question one is, how much is stigma in mental health in our communities? I'd like to hear your views on this. So we have a lot, which is on 84%. Not a lot, 5%, not sure, 11%. I welcome your views on this, and also just the point where I asked earlier, yes, whether you said a lot, stigma is in our communities, but I want to hear your views about at what point do you think stigma starts? So you can raise your hands using the icons, or if you have your video on, if you wave your hand, I'll be able to see you. And then we can have this lively discussion about this very important topic on stigma today. Nashar, hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. I think stigma in general starts from childhood, really, from when you realise that you're different from other people, whether that's pointed out to you or whether you just see it for yourself. And then it goes on from there. And then when in adulthood, it's more due to lack of understanding and not having the knowledge and information that's required. And obviously, if you're impacted by what other people think and by what other people say, then it leads on from there and follows on from that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Nashar. I think I saw Kay's hand up, if I'm not wrong. You might need to unmute yourself, Kay. We can't hear you. It's switched.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning, everyone. I was just going to say that stigma starts as soon as one realizes that things are wrong with them, and also as soon as the people around you realize that something is wrong with you and they start behaving differently.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Kay. Yes, I can see somebody's hand up, starting with 074. So I do apologize, I can't see your name, but yes, please.
Yeah, it's Janet. Yeah, I'm
Thank
actually at an appointment, but I will just be brief. Thank you very much for this session, and thank you everyone for joining in. My name is Janet Bakari. Yeah, for stigma, for you to know stigma has started in your life as an individual is actually when you start seeing yourself worthless. You start seeing yourself not good enough. I did agree with the first speaker who said from childhood, but childhood, because we are not fully responsible for ourselves and other things around us, it's still parents that are doing things. We do see it, but it doesn't affect us that deeply as it does when we are adults. Stigma can start at any stage in your life, really. It's only how you can manage it. Things like in a life, even in your relationship, in your everyday relationship, when you see things are not going on well, you start withdrawing yourself. And if you don't get out of that withdrawal situation, you start to self-stigmatize yourself before people can start stigmatizing you. Because when people stigmatizes you and you yourself, you know your worth, your self-worth, then stigmatization does not hit you that hard. So I would say for stigmatization to hit somebody, you need, that person has lost their self-worth. That person has lost their self-image. That's my take on that one.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Janet. I see Ashley's hand up.
Yeah, following on from the last speakers, I think it starts when you're a child. Because if you're a parent and your child starts to show symptoms of some type of mental illness, you don't want that for your child. Even if it is going to help them, like, to recognize it, it's really easy to just go, my child's fine, he's just shy, he's just that. And I think that's where it comes from. That's where the self-stigma comes from, because you're brought up being like, no, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you. And I think that's what ends up going into adulthood. It's just that kind of like shame of having mental health issues.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Yeah, thank you for those invaluable contributions. Now that we've thought and we've explored about where we think actually stigma comes from, then as we go back to our next question is, how much is stigma then in our communities? I can see some people put 84%, and I'd love to hear from you why you put 84%. Some people also say not a lot, 5%, and somebody said not sure. So I'd love to hear why you put the answer you put down, just to aid in our conversation today. I think, as people alluded to, where stigma comes from, the people who surround you are generally your family and your community. But yes, I can see Victor's hand is up.
Since then, I've forgotten the exact question you asked.
It was how much is stigma in mental health in our communities? How much do you think it's?
It's very high. It's very high. And I'm going back to my roots on this one. Every child is deemed to be productive and contributing to the whole, the family, the community. There's that expectation. So if anyone that doesn't play their part as expected by the family or the community is seen as a burden on them. And these and anything that prevents you from making that contribution, be it mental health, be it disability, it is seen as as you're seen as not being, valuable to the whole. Maybe to you, mostly the mothers, bless them, would value the child, but even dads, have a grading system of a child, how they perceive a child, how clever that child is, how hardworking that child is. And if you're not, they start shunning you. And society picks up on that. Before you know it, you've been labeled with something. And if you're disabled or have mental health issues, that tag you carry that tag along. Anything you say, no matter how sensible it is, can be dismissed easily. Oh, they're this. And that people feed off that. People feed off that, because if you're not careful, we'll always pick on the people that are weak in our societies. And things that are associated with them are seen as negative. And that is what gradually builds up what we now refer to as stigma. It's our attitudes, our ingrained attitudes, societal norms and cultures that push us to see things in a particular way and not making accommodation for others or accepting others for what they can contribute. Because I think that one of the comments I've read, which I really appreciate, is that we talk about disability, but in truth, they have abilities that we ignore simply because of our perception of who they are.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Victor. Yes, definitely. The way we think about stuff really affects how we see things. So yes, definitely. I can see Mbone.
Sorry, before I drop off, I'm keeping my camera off because our network here is so poor and there are too many people using Wi-Fi. And it affects you. You freeze ever so often.
Thank you. We still appreciate your presence, Victor. I see Mbone has your hand up, and then we can have Nishai after that.
Hi there. Hopefully, I'm not going to put my camera on. Apologies, I'm at work. So I just wanted to add to the previous speaker. In terms of when we talk about the stigma, I think the stigma starts with us. And also, I believe that it's some sort of a cultural in us, in terms of our cultural beliefs. I did put a comment to everyone. We do not talk about mental health. We're very comfortable to talk about somebody having cancer, for instance, but we're ashamed. And as a parent who has a child that has had mental health for a couple of years, I must say, for instance, I use myself as an African woman. It's not something initially I felt ashamed. As a previous speaker, you kind of like just think, have you failed as a parent? And thank God I have my sister who actually sent me this to attend this session today. And I wanted to break that stigma. And I actually approached my son and I said, do you mind if I can actually talk about our experience, what you've been through? And thank God, 8 years, 9 years, he's here. I've seen boys who have committed suicide. I've been able to talk to other parents, share my ideas, help them, and it's still a struggle. But as I said initially, in the community, you don't talk about it because when people hear it, they make it like gossip because it's not something. So it starts with us. It starts with us actually being open, actually being able to look at it and share the ideas, see what you're going through, maybe your child, especially we have young men who are committing suicide. This is a major thing in our community, and we need to start talking. We need to start talking and not seeing it as a gossiping, to gossip. We need to be open. We need to help each other. Otherwise, our children are dying. And as I said, I'm very passionate about it because I'm still having my journey with my son, and I'm blessed that he's still here. He regresses, but as a parent, I am making sure that the community mental health, I'm holding them accountable because those are the areas that sometimes parents do not know they're right. And you, as the parent who is representing all, you need to make sure that you've got all the rights, you get all the right support, and you hold them accountable to make sure that the child is receiving the treatment that they deserve. So yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for that, Morning. And yeah, thank you for being such a voice in the community for, you know, changing the wording around what's been happening, changing it from gossip to learning. So please, if you could share your details, if a private message, your email address, because you seem like one of the people who we need to use to change the narrative and the story. I'll be really interested in connecting with you. Yeah, but welcome, and we do thank you for the contribution. Nyasha?
Yeah, so I think as well, like with it affects our help seeking behavior because of things that you hear that have gone on in the past, how they used to treat patients with mental health, you know, and like the other lady was saying about the gossiping that comes along with it from other people who don't know or don't understand, or just in some cases just sheer ignorance, you know. But the thing is, obviously you never know when these things are going to hit you. You know, you may not struggle with it for a long time, but at some point somewhere along the lines is going to have a low point, and obviously that's the best time to get help. But with all the stigma that's attached to everything, you know, you don't want to be labeled as crazy or the mad one, or, you know, or how people see it. But, you know, I like to remind people that actually that, you know, there's a fine line between intelligence and craziness. Like, you know, so even though the words don't necessarily sound very nice, they're not necessarily a bad thing.
Yes, I totally.
Yeah, and like, if you know, if you can look outside the labels, then, you know, I feel like the labels help other people be able to guide you and direct you in the right place. But the labels are not necessarily who you are. They're just some of the things that you carry within you.
Yeah, because you within yourself, you're so many more things, not just the one thing. Absolutely. Yeah. And you've kindly very alluded to our next question, which you've gone into very straight away, not like everybody else's views on this, is then with stigma, how does this affect our help-seeking behavior? And thanks for that contribution, My Voice in Power, because yeah, it definitely does either positively affect or negatively. So a lot of you said 80% does affect, I mean, sorry, it's come down. So it does affect, I say 80% said, yeah, it does affect. 50% of you said, oh no, sorry, the other way around. 79% said 80% it does affect. 21% of you said 50% it does affect. So neither here or there, and nobody said 0%. So it looks like people are either saying yes, it does affect, and some people are saying no, it doesn't affect. It'd be interesting to hear who said 50-50, they think yes, no, and yes, it does affect. The stigma does affect our help-seeking behavior. It'd be interesting to hear what people's views are on that. I can see Gillian's hand up.
Hi, Eva.
Hello.
Hi. So sorry, I'm also at work, so I wouldn't be coming on camera. Yes, it does affect seeking help because you already feel ashamed, and you don't want people to know that that's what you're going through because of the stigma around, or the perception that you have of the stigma around the illness. So it will deter you from seeking help. And also the people you seek help from don't make it any easier. I mean, I am the one who sent the link to Mbone. I am her son's godmother. So I am very passionate, and we've been in this struggle from the very beginning. And I have a personal experience because my twin sister was suffering from depression for a very long time as well. And it's even worse because she was in Cameroon. So she did not even have as much assistance in any way because it's a non-issue in our society back home. But here we come again, it stems down to our cultural beliefs and how we were brought up, because in Cameroon, if somebody went mental, they'll say, oh, that person is crazy, is mad, and the parents will tend to keep the children in the house for the society not to know that there's something wrong with their child. And I think that has been ingrained into us growing up. So coming over here has helped some of us. It has enlightened some of us, but we still haven't come out of the woodworks because, like Bonnet said, we still think it's a thing to gossip. You hear that somebody's child is suffering. You don't even think of what the child is going through, let alone the parents. But you go around spreading malicious rumors. So for the patient, it will be very hard, especially if the patient is not at a state where they are aware of what they are going through. So even when they become aware and they know they need to seek help, they begin to think, what is the society going to think about my situation? So that deters them from seeking the help. So it's all about us educating ourselves and getting to a point where we accept that this is part of life and that we really need to reach out because there's help out there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Gillian. Yes, definitely. As you said, we need to accept it's there, but then make it an educational point of talking rather than a blame culture or a gossip thing. And you said, think about what the child is going through, leave alone the parents, what's the best thing we can do for that child? So that's really important. If we focus on what's important, that should steer us in the right direction. And thank you for inviting Bonnet and sharing, please. Thank you for that. Any other views about what we think, how stigma affects how we seek help? If not, I will move to the next question. How much are you aware of self-stigma in mental health? So this is when you have self-stigma in yourself. So I guess it's when you're blaming yourself. It's like that caption of the person who was holding a plate and saying, I'm an adult, I should be able to sort out my own problems. How much do you think this plays a role? I can see people answered 80% it does play a role, and that 68% of you agreed with it. Does it play 50% in how much we are aware of it? 21% of you said yes. And then is it only 10% and 11% of you said yes? So it would be, again, helpful to hear what you think, self-stigma, and at what point does it stop? Does it start being your self-stigma? It's not even about what people are saying about you. It's about what you're telling yourself. So it'd be interesting to hear what people have, your reactions to this. Ashley, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, so with self-stigma, so I suffer quite bad from mental health issues, and for years I didn't tell anyone because it was kind of like I should be able to deal with it myself, and I shouldn't have to ask for help because why shouldn't I be able to deal with it myself? And I think that's a giant thing, is that most people don't realize the amount of people that suffer in silence because they just don't want to make that first step to ask. So I think this is actually huge because it's one of those things where we'll never know the actual amount because they won't say to begin with. So it's friends and families that everyone has will suffer in silence because they just don't want to take that first step.
Yeah, definitely. It's, as you said, it's that thing of why am I not able to handle this, It's a big question. Thank you for that, Ashley. My voice in power?
Yeah, I think it's harder as well when you're the go-to person, when everybody comes to you and then you're helping everybody else and can't figure out why you can't help yourself. Or, your strategies that used to work at one point have stopped working for some reason. So yeah, there is a lot of that. And then it's also, even if you're able to source the help, it's overcoming being able to get there to even begin the process as well in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're the go-to person, that's a very important one. Is you're used to solving other people's problems, and then comes a position of how can I need help for this? I should be able to sort it out. Yeah, perfectionist. I'm a fast one. I have a perfectionist syndrome as well. So I totally get that one. Yes.
And then I think,
yeah.
oh, sorry, yeah, and then so I've lost my train of thought now as well. Anyway, don't worry.
When it comes back, happy to hear that thought. I've got Rachel on it, and then I can have Gillian again.
Hello. I think there is a lot of them, they stigmatize themselves because sometimes you can go and try and help them, and then they feel like the same way the picture said, I'm an adult, I'll do it, and no, don't worry, I'll be fine. Don't worry, I'll be fine. And it goes over and over again and again, on and on. And that makes things so hard, because the more you try to help, the more they are pushing you away. The more you try to tell them, maybe let me try to help you this side, let me try to do this, and that's when they are saying, no, I'll do it, I'm an adult, I can do it. Don't forget I am 30, don't forget I'm 40, don't forget I'm this, and I'm over 18, so I'll do it. And so while they are trying to do it, they just seated there a day, a week, a month, a year. And the more you try to push them and try to let them know that you're still there for them, the more they isolate themselves and stay away from other people. And no matter how much you want to help them, so you can't do much. You can't force them. So it's really hard. Yeah, I've seen it. I'm in it. So I know what I'm talking about.
Thank you for that, Rachel. Yes, you're very right. And also it brings, as you said, 18-year-olds, you feel like maybe we should give them a perception of you still need help. It doesn't mean you can handle everything. But yes, I totally agree with you. People feel they can handle everything and anything. As much as you want to help them, it doesn't seem to be being of help as much as you intended it. Thank you for that, Rachel. I can see Mbone, you've got your hand up.
Hi, I just wanted to add that someone who has mental health, I can tell you they're very much in denial. So it's the responsibility of family members and very close friends. The most difficult thing you can do is to section someone. I did section my son because I know him better. So it's a very difficult thing. I think your loved one, and you have to, like, because they would never accept someone who has mental health would tell you, you are the one who is crazy. Sometimes I used to think, I used to call somebody, my son would say, Mom, you're the one who has the problem. But that is where you need to make sure you have a record of what they're doing, seek help, and don't hesitate, because the only thing you can do for yourself and your loved ones is to get them sectioned to give them the treatment.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mbone. Yes, definitely. We also have to acknowledge the sense of denial in them, and we need to intervene to make sure they get the help that is required. I'm about to stop sharing the polls. I wonder whether anybody else has something. If you want to talk about stigma generally, if you want to talk about your experience, if you want to, I'd welcome that. Oh, Nashai, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's not just denial. I think as well, especially if you're an adult, it is the fear of breaking down and not knowing where it's going to take you and not being able to come back from that. Like, yeah, and it can be very difficult when you're looking to others for help, but they're not able to help you in the same way that you're able to help them. And that's why, like, throughout all of these talks that we've had, I always go back to looking within inside ourselves. It's important that people know that sometimes what they're looking for, they actually already hold within, which is why they're able to help others, but others aren't always necessarily able to help them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. I can see Kay's hand and then Karim after that.
Yes, stigma and discrimination worsening mental health condition and likely put them in a dangerous condition. Do you hear me? About stigma and discrimination worsening mental health condition.
Yes.
Because this thing comes from society, mockery and discrimination. Yeah, this is some of the things that people experience and they felt ill and they go back to where they're from.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that, Karim. I saw Kay, and then we can have Gillian and then Annette.
Hi again. I just wanted to add one point that people with stigma, and okay, some seek help, but again, over and over again, then they give up because they think, well, I've had this for long and it's not getting better, and then they give up. Yeah, that's all I wanted to add, just giving up, and because of so many things happening around, isolation, everybody thinks you are not right, and then they give up.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kay. Gillian?
Yeah, I also think after listening to nearly everyone on this particular question, I think the denial or the lack, the thing that is stopping them from also getting help could be that they think they are going to lose control. Because as adults, you're already in control of so many facets of your life. Then suddenly this thing happens to you. And yeah, you have to go through the process. You have to go through a phase to accept that there's something happening to you, because it's not easy. And I can really appreciate that for somebody who has been having all their faculties, doing everything normally and getting to control themselves. Then suddenly that control is taken away from you, right down to the point of medication and all of that. Because when you had a headache before, you could go and say, let me drink paracetamol. Now somebody is telling you that there's something mentally wrong with you. You cannot feel it physically. And that's when you feel, that's when in our subconscious, when we feel weak, we know there's something wrong. But with a mental state, you don't become weak. You just, it's all within your brains. That is not about the physicality. So to take that control away from somebody and say, oh, you need medication to do this, they don't think there's anything wrong with them. So the control, I think there's an element of that control that they lose, which they want to hang on to, because that's like part of their dignity to have control over one's life. So I think that plays a part in holding people back from seeking help, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for that, Gillian. Yes, definitely. That's, as I said, it doesn't manifest itself just like a simple headache and you can take this and it's sorted. So yeah, we need to understand that. Annette, I did see your hand up.
Okay, as that lady said, it's about control and feeling out of control, that you don't have any control over your own life and what you do, because with mental health, it affects different people in different ways. Some people are quite able to knowing that they're unwell, and sometimes there's triggers they know, and some are able to seek help, or they're able to family members and friends who are around them can talk to them and say, the last time we had this episode, you know, there are signs there, you're showing signs of what's happening, you know, we need to contact the GP. We need to, you know, get some more advice, let them know how you're feeling. Some people I've known in the past who've been in hospital, and, you know, initially it's fine when they're given the drugs and they, you know, a few days and they're feeling a little bit more themselves. And there are things, and sometimes they're in with people who are not at their stage, and they feel sometimes threatened by others when they're in an institution or in a hospital somewhere, when they are now taking more control of what's going around them. They're thinking more clearly, especially when they're on these powerful drugs that they give you know, the patients. And in that setting, it all depends on how it's dealt with, and it's how the staff also interact with the patients. Some are able to say, this doesn't feel right to me, but then they made to think that, oh, no, that is correct. And the patient know, because they're not in that state, that they're recognizing, I was unwell and now I'm feeling better. What is happening now is not, it's even in the way they're dressed, you know, it affects them. They feel, oh no, I shouldn't be in this. I need to be in my own clothes. You know, some of those things affect them and they feel totally out of control. That's what's been fed back and what I've observed myself from people who I've known that's gone through that. They just feel that and again, when initially they feel that something isn't quite right, they remember the last experience. So they don't really want to say to you, oh, I'm not feeling this way. I'm feeling this way now, because they tend to remember and they don't want to go back there because that was a bad experience for them. So it's very complicated, and it's a, you know, it's a societal thing. It's a community thing, and we just have to support. And when we see someone not able to speak up for themselves, then we have to speak up for them, even with the doctors or the nurses or whoever caring for them, if you get the opportunity to do that. So yes, it's very, it's also, they feel it's a stigma. People are not going to see me seriously, you know, so they hide away from it as well. So it's really complicated, I find, and that's really what I've got to say.
Yeah, thank you for that, Annette. As you said, it's complicated. It's not just one thing. And we have to be open to helping them if they can't help themselves. Challenging, as you said. And yeah, some wonderful points you've raised there. Thank you for that, Annette. My voice in power?
So just to highlight on the complication of things as well, you know, healing can also create a mental health episode, because if you've lived a life of trauma, like that's been your whole life, that's all you know, when you start to heal from that, that can create an emptiness, and you start to enter a life that you don't know, you don't understand the thoughts, the feelings, the processes, and so that you know, you can find yourself depressed from that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. Yeah, yes, very useful topic today on stigma and mental health. Definitely, have you all alluded today. But it's all about, as we all said, we need to stand up against stigma so people can get the help for the mental health they require. And how we talk to people, how we refer to whatever they're going through is very, very important. Again, as we said, when people said, it's some people might need some help, it's you stepping in and not just denying it and saying it's not there. And reaching out, and I hope the conversations, as we make more conversation about mental health available and it's the norm to talk about it, then the stigma, I hope, will reduce. Thank you very much for your contributions. I'll bring in Cecily for a few minutes, and let's hear what she has to say on the topic.
Wow, very empowering conversation so far. And I like the fact that we are bringing in all the points that are needed to be known, understood with regards to stigma, and especially the self-stigma, and then going on to accessing the services that there are. So the key to this really is the relationship we have with each other, and that comes with educating ourselves or making ourselves familiar with these, with these matters, so that we don't deliberately or unconsciously trigger others into really that space that we don't want them to be. So we cannot manage that without educating ourselves, and which is why we are having these conversations to make to make it normal. Have that confidence to start mental health conversations without feeling that you are upsetting somebody else out there. So to reinforce all what you have mentioned, there is a short video clip which is going to help us really continue with the conversation, and more so avoid self-discrimination. And as we've seen, the fact of the matter is we all have mental health. Yeah, and that understanding alone will help us support somebody else after supporting ourselves, and more so access the services that are available to us early enough, because evidence shows that early intervention quickens the recovery. But for most of us, we would tend to wait until we are at the crisis point, and that only creates more anxiety to ourselves and our family members. So let me share the video clip, and then we can have a bit of more conversation on it. And as I've said, you have brought in a few of that so far. So let me do this. What are the first
What are the first words that come to mind when you think of a person with cancer? You may have thought some things like brave, sick, strong, warrior. What are the first words that come to mind when you think of a person with a mental illness? We commonly hear people say things like weak, sad, violent, unstable, crazy, even looking for attention. This is stigma in action. First, let's define stigma. According to Merriam-Webster, stigma is a mark of shame or discredit. The Cambridge Dictionary defines stigma as a strong feeling of disapproval that most people in a society have about something, especially when that disapproval is unfair. Historically, the stigma associated with mental illness caused mentally ill people to be institutionalized, thrown in jail, or even killed. People did not understand mental illness, so they were afraid of it. While these atrocities have greatly diminished in our world today, stigma is still alive and well in our societies. Here is how we may see stigma today. Many people attribute mental illness as a weakness or character flaw, but the reality is that mental illness is a disease of the brain. People with depression are sick, just like people with cancer. Like cancer patients, people with mental illness are strong and brave because they battle their illness every day, oftentimes alone. But many people refer to them as crazy or unstable. Finally, many people say those with mental illness just want attention, which is untrue, invalidating, and hurtful. Stigma is harmful because it prevents us from opening up to others about our struggles and from seeking treatment. The negative effects of stigma are very strong. The average delay between the onset of symptoms and the start of treatment is 8 to 11 years. We would never wait that long if we had a broken bone or trouble breathing. Lack of mental health knowledge and lack of access to care also prevent us from getting treatment, but stigma plays a large role as well. So what can we do about it? Thankfully, things are improving. Here are some other steps that you can take to be a mental health ally. Be educated on and literate in mental health. This is the best way to combat stigma. Use the right language. Avoid saying things that perpetuate stigma, like, I'm so bipolar right now, or you're so OCD about cleaning, or they're just acting crazy so that they can get attention. Be open-minded. Listen to people who have experienced mental illness, how they have been stigmatized, and how it has affected their lives. Speak up and correct others who do stigmatize. And finally, create a safe and supportive environment for those living with mental illness. We hope you found this information helpful. We at Mental Health Collaborative are committed to providing education and increasing awareness about all of the interrelated.
Wow, very powerful and informative message there, but let's hear your views on that. Given that you've already alluded into most of what has been said here, but let's hear what you think. Yes, Annette.
I think the language we use make a lot of difference, how you treat people who have, I mean, as you said, we all have mental health and people suffer from depression and different sort of mental health situation. And I think often it's the language, how you speak to people, make a great difference to how they're feeling, because we never know how someone's feeling on any day, and just approaching people in the right way and just, you know, just a kind word or even the tone of how you speak to them make a lot of difference to how they're feeling on that day. You know, so yes, someone may be suffering a long term, as someone else mentioned about mental health and so forth. But often, yes, sometimes people don't want to acknowledge that they have a problem. Yes, but, you know, we know because you're going through the same thing over and over again. And we have to find a way of getting through to them and say, look, you know, if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to get the same result. If you want the result to change, you have to change something. And this may be a start. Seek some help. You know, I don't know, as a friend to you, everything about you. You may not want to talk about it to me, but it may be something that's bothering you that you may be able to go and speak to a complete stranger about. But just if you keep doing this and you're getting the same result, you need to change something and seek it elsewhere. You may not take my word for it, but, you know, go out and ask someone else. So I really think sometimes it's the language and how we interact with each other can make a great difference. It's either can help someone who are willing to accept and go out, and there are other people who just don't see it because they don't want to see their way, because they've been stigmatized for a long time. And so sometimes they just believe and they feel that, oh, I just don't want to engage, or they probably don't even think, oh, what's the point? So, you know, as I said, a kind word will get someone to think, and the tone of how you speak to them. Even in the medical profession, some people just don't have any bedside manners. I know some staff are stressed, and, you know, and then the gossip, you know, sometimes because someone's ill, that doesn't mean they can't hear, you know what I mean, what you're saying about them to someone else. They can hear. So they're not going to trust you if they can hear you gossiping about them. So yeah, that's really what I've got to say.
Very powerful there. And I like the point you have really emphasized on there, finding a way, you know, of making them understand or know that they are not well, because that is the beginning of everything.
Yeah.
Once you find a way of getting to them, then you are on the road to supporting them, get that support that they need. Purely because When one is unwell, they lack the insights to understand that they are. But you out there, you know it, you see it. It's frustrating not to read it.
Absolutely.
Message, but you somehow have to make sure that you get them. And it's all about kind ones, your behaviors and attitudes, and the language that you use usually go a long way. And I like the work Recovery College does, because I know they run a program called the Wellness Recovery Plan. That is the LAP plan. And the LAP plan really helps people who are, somebody who is not well, to have a plan for how they manage their life. And, so that they share that with somebody that they trust. And that person that they trust will help them for when they become unwell, because they will pinpoint at some of the things that they are observing or noticing. So thank you for that, Annette. There are two hands. I see Nyasha there and Ashley, but also Kay is there. But also there is a comment on the chat, Casimila, a very important point there. You feel the video clip has highlighted the fact that mental health is the same as, there is that is the same as physical health. And if we see it as such, then we'll be in a better position to seek the support we need, and also for people around us to give us that support. Yeah, now I'll start with Nyasha. Your hand was up first, and then Ashley, and then Kay.
Yeah, so just to say, it seems a bit contradictory, because those of us who do have insight, after a while, with acceptance of what we have, and we've learned to cope with it, learned to live with it, they become labels that we begin to use, because, to say someone is unstable might not be nice to say, and it might not be nice for someone to hear, but that word does describe exactly how you feel. So amongst like myself and my friend, with who have, that's what I feel unstable today. Oh, I'm having an OCD like phase, because so it becomes really difficult with choosing what to use, because once you're already in that insight world, this becomes the language that you begin to use, because it really describes how you're feeling during those different episodes that you have.
Precisely, and that is quite common. And this is why when you know somebody so well, then you'll know, or you'll notice when they are not unaware, when they start using those ones. So again, it goes back to really having a good relationship with somebody, so that you notice or you realize when they are not well, and support them accordingly, but also being in a position to nicely challenge the self-discrimination, self-stigma. Because again, we are trying to discourage stigma in itself. So self-stigma, people can become quite comfortable with it, but having the confidence to challenge that, I think, goes a long way. Yeah, for the sake of our communities. But yes, Ashley.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the language that Annette was mentioning, because that's something that's huge that most people don't even realize they're doing. In my autism workshops, I always say that autism is classed as a disability, but it does not mean you're disabled. And I think that's a huge thing, is that when you get diagnosed with something or you have depression, you think that you have to just be depressed. And that's like a huge thing, is that they always put that label on you that you're there. And it doesn't have to be that way. Just because you have a mental health or you're autistic or absolutely anything doesn't mean that it changes who you are. It just might make things a little bit harder, but it doesn't mean that that's who you are. That label doesn't matter.
Very true. And like we say, disability is not inability. Yeah, there are so many things that are unique in you that people will benefit from. And so we shouldn't look at people's disability as inabilities, but give them the space and time to do the things that they do best. Yeah, so Eva, can I take it back to you? And we have Kay and Chuck.
Yes, thank you, Cecily. Yeah, Kay.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add or highlight that while we are being supportive and confident in our job, or we need to mind our body language, because these people with this condition are very sensitive. They observe and they are just looking and waiting how we talk to them. And also negative words, say like when we hand over, like say, oh, he's a liability, or he's not trying, and things like that. And also tones of our voices. When you talk to them, we have to mind things like tones of our voice, because it says a lot, it speaks a lot. You could be saying the right words, but if the tone of your voice is saying something else. So those are the things I wanted to highlight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay. Yes, we need to watch that, definitely. Body language and tone are really, really important. Emeka, I can see your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to add that words are powerful, and the way in which we use our words to give people who are living with mental health, it can either give them hope, or it can really destabilize them. So it's and both with how we say things and what we're actually saying needs to be congruent, so that as I agree with the last person who spoke, that we are quite sensitive, and we can pick up on whether you're being, I'd say, supportive or not. So all I'm saying here is that be congruent with your words and with your actions as well, so that so that there's a good foundation for a person to believe that they can break their own self-stigma, and in turn have the confidence to share their story to break the stigma in our communities.
Yeah, definitely. Words are powerful. Thank you for that, Emeka. Definitely. Thank you very much for your contributions, everybody. That was a fruitful discussion. And I hope you've all learned a lot. I have, tone, words, we need to be supportive. We need to support each other and help out. I think through having conversations like this, we can inform others and be the champions and the change that we want to see in our communities and in our society. Before I bring in James to give us one last word, I have just posted on the chat, there is a Child Wellness Week program that's running. I believe it's coming up this week. If you open the PDF, I hope everybody try and see whether you can open up. It's a Children's Mental Health Week. Have a look at that. It's got really good information. We here as well at the Community Hub on Oxford Road, we have a coffee morning every Tuesday at 11:30 to 1. And it's just a space to come in, have some warm cup of tea or coffee, have a chat. Hopefully put some games. So people are welcome to come in on that. Unless Cicely has something to say, or Annette, do you have any, or Ashley, any announcements from what you're doing this week?
I just wanted actually to come in there on Chuck's point and everybody else who has contributed. Sometimes last year, and this is something that we continued to endeavor to have, we learned a few sessions on therapeutic conversations, all geared towards, helping ourselves to relate with each other well, thinking about health and well-being. How can we hold therapeutic conversations that will help others feel empowered to manage whatever issues they may be going through? And that really went very well. And Chuck, out of that, ran a few sessions or a few episodes through the media platform, 8 of them. And he is starting another series of 8 of them. I believe this afternoon sometime. Maybe
This
Chuck, you can tell
afternoon.
us a little bit more about that.
So basically, I am based on my experience of living with a mental health condition, wanted to share my story and share some insights that I've been able to gather over the time that I've not only been living here in Reading, but also just living with a mental health condition generally. So the name of the podcast and sessions is called Born to Be Alive, because I believe that everybody, whether you have whether you're going through mental ill health or not, is born to be alive, like living to the fullest that they possibly can. So starting this afternoon, I'll be looking at positive support networks and how you can create them, and why it's important to have a healthy relationship, not only with yourself, but with others as you go through recovery.
Yeah, that sounds brilliant. Thank you for that, Jack. Please could you send us your podcast details on the group chat? Maybe people would want to join in.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll definitely do that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, without further ado, I think I'll bring in James now. And I'll also copy your podcast onto our Twitter page and Facebook page as well, what you're doing. Ashley, did you have anything for this week at all or not?
So earlier, I think it was Cicely spoke about having like a plan is so good for your mental health, and we actually have a workshop coming up in I think it's in 2 weeks' time, which is wellness planning for carers. So it's for people that care for someone, whether that's mental health or physical, and how they can look after themselves. Because obviously, if you're looking after someone else, they're your priority, and you can let yourself slip. So it's all about it's 4 sessions, and it's all about how to build that plan for yourself. How do you give yourself like a wellness toolbox, and what can you do day to day just to make yourself feel better? So yeah, that's what Compass is doing in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Yeah, I think I've covered everybody. So James, if I want to bring you in to give us a word for the day or a take home, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Thank you, everybody. In fact, I'm responding to Eva from the Wellbeing Hub along Oxford Road. And like Eva said, I'm there every Tuesday. And basically, I'm not going to be there like a mental health practitioner, but as a champion within your community, one of you. But if you need any help regard to anything that is causing you problem, I will be available as well. But I just want to put that in. Normally, I'm a CBT therapist. I work for BHFT, the same trust Cecily worked for as well. Before I come to the thing that I really want to talk about, or what we've been talking about, let me give a small context to what I'm going to do. And I normally like to do that through a story. There were 2 kids growing up in different environments. And at a very early age, both had some issue to do with an accident, injury. So one rushed to mom, and mom said, don't come to me, that's a minor thing. You know, you're a big boy now, you can manage these things. And the boy went away and dealt with it in his own way. And that actually began to show him how independence is also important, but also stigma began to show that my injury was not respected by my mom. She told me, that's nothing, just deal with it. And that's how his own stigma started. On the other hand, the other young man also same age too, had an injury, went to mom, and mom was kissing the place and doing everything, pampering and everything. Again, that was also a positive stigma. Perhaps for some people, it can also be a negative stigma. So what that is actually bringing me to is schema. We all develop something we call schema in the job that we do. But schema really is about how you develop coping strategies, how you engage with yourself when you have any problem, and how you engage with the environment around you when you have problems, or the society you belong to. So it could be your family, your immediate society, and also the larger society as well. So that's really what I want to bring to your notice, that stigma can start at an early age, and it can be developed internally or externally, and there are a lot of environmental factors as well. So going forward with this, I have been able to look at some of the stigma sources. We have what we call self-stigmatization, which most people have already alluded to, in terms of how you begin to internalize that the problem you have was caused by you. If you have a mental health problem, you begin to say, oh, this is my problem. I caused this mental health issue. Otherwise, I would have been able to be strong, so that's you internalizing that problem. So you're already beginning to stigmatize yourself or begin to beat yourself really quite hard. The second source really is family stigma as well. In most families, maybe if you want to find time this afternoon to check, every family has got values and belief around illness of any kind, be it cardiovascular problem, diabetes, any kind of illness, including mental health, they all have values. So you have your little value you carry with you. And these values are actually meant to protect us. For example, I don't do this in my family. You have to take off your shoes when you enter my home and all of those things, or vice versa. Or there's another value that we don't talk about this in our family. So these values are meant to protect us, but really they're actually also damaging us. So it's really important to bear that in mind. The other stigma really is the stigma that we get from society itself, because we are constantly bombarded by society, the media, people trying to make life very easy for us, but at the same time making it a little bit complicated. There was a newspaper, I think it was The Guardian, some years back when I read. It was actually a survey that went out, and they were asking a lot of people to talk about locking mental health patients in hospitals. And the overwhelming response was, yes, we want them to be out of the street. We want them to be locked up in hospitals. So you can imagine how powerful that kind of stigma is. Everybody that responded, about 80% said, yes, let's lock them up so that the street is clean of people who are mad, who are violent, they are distressed, they are bunkers, they are needles, you name it. And these are some of the stigmatization languages that we use. I mean, somebody mentioned about language. So as we go along, we begin to see how this thing affects us. The other source of stigma really is the treatment itself, where you go for help, because it's full of labeling. I think most people have said it. They might describe it to say, this is your diagnosis. When people are diagnosed with cancer, it's a little bit betterly received and compared to when you're diagnosed with mental health issues. The language use is very kind of imposing. They don't give you any clarification because it's not understood. If you were to search in your own tribe or language or culture, how do you describe schizophrenia? How do you name it? How do you call it? How do you call depression? So it's really important when we go for treatment, it's really in our own control to really seek for clarification. What do you mean by depression? Because we all have descriptions in our own languages back in Africa or the Caribbean island or in the in India, so any other country that you come from. So we have a lot of ways to describe when we are depressed, but we don't call it depression. So if you're told that you're depressed, that's going to put you back, begin to wonder, what is this about? So you really need to be communicating with your GP or whoever is assessing you to clarify some of these things, to label them, to name them, to understand, to explain what does it mean to be depressed. I will start by you either sleep less, you sleep more, you overthink, you're angry sometimes, and all of those things can give people a lot of good meaning. So when we're looking at schema, really is about how you develop, how to cope. So if you were one of those young boys I've mentioned, maybe the one who was just said, come on, go deal with it, you probably stay away from services because that's how you develop, believing that people don't help people when they're in trouble because my mom did it, so that's really a good schema for you to understand. And we all have schemas. And I think Eva mentioned about perfectionism. That's also another schema. But why do we want to be perfect? So the schema there might be I'm imperfect. So I need to do something to make me become perfect. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I'm very bad at doing stuff. So I need to do it more and more. So all of these things have schema. They have something that is developing it, something that they root to, they go back to and find. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here. So really, in terms of going forward, it's about asking yourself, how do you report observation? When your child or your son, for our sister who told us about son who was admitted in a mental health hospital, how do you communicate changes in somebody? Because it's really about how we do it. It's not what we are doing, but how we do it that can make the other person become a bit offensive. So that's really key. So let's take that home. How do you help somebody? But how do you observe that somebody is struggling? How do you know? So the way we interpret some of these things can be also a source of stigma for those people. It's really important to understand how do you help somebody, because helping somebody, supporting somebody is good. We all want to be kind because it's really good. But how do we do it is really quite important. And going forward, let me look at interpretation also. All of what we've been saying today really can also be linked to how do we interpret our treatment, our assessments, what is happening to us. Is really important to know how do you interpret it? How do you understand it? If somebody's saying, I have anxiety, what is that? What is happening in their lives? How is the body reacting? Do they understand? Are you breathing fast or slow? Your heart rate, is it rapid or slow? Are you sweating? Are you shaking? Are you restless? Are you pacing? So it's really important to count on those things. I saw you a little bit not settle you up and down. Is there anything we can do about it? What is it? Is there any help I can offer? Maybe that will help somebody to really disclose to you. But if we start by stop pacing, stop, why are you restless? What's that about? What's wrong with you? And that's really is going to push them away from you. So it's really important to bear all of these in mind because we are very community people. It's like we live in a very big village and we talk to each other every day, but it's about how do we. And when we all come to live in another place, there are a lot of changes. The environment is either against us, it's for us. The weather is either terrible or it's good. There are also other issues going on around us. And for that mom who has got so many things to do, and also to pay attention to what's going on in the family with the son or the daughter, it's not easy. So it's really important to have some planning. How do you organize your thinking? Is so important. For us, it's not easy at all. So I'm really here to work with people and to let them understand. I think somebody mentioned that this call is such an important factor for us. And this is where we come to talk about some of those issues. And we share some of our challenges as well. So somebody was talking about recovery and healing also. Healing can also be a source of emotional distress, depending on how you accept the healing. Because for every illness, for every challenge, there's going to be a learning, there's going to be a change. You will change. Because the thoughts that we endure or exhibit in getting a problem or challenging situation, we cannot use those thoughts to solve the problem. So when you have a problem, for example, any mental health diagnosis, at the end of the day, when you are told that you are stable, you have changed, things have changed in your life. So that's in itself is a challenge. So it's really accepting, adapting, and encouraging and allowing that change to take place. Again, I will finally leave you with a very common story. This was a research that was done in Egypt. The two guys went to a mental health hospital together and they were discharged. One came from an affluent background, one came from a very poor basic background. And they went home. They said, you discharged, everything's okay. And the guy who went to an affluent background relapsed before the guy who went to a very common, maybe poor background. So I want you guys to tell me why did the guy who went to the affluent background relapse before the other person? Who can tell me why? Any attempts? Or have you all gone home?
Can you repeat the story?
Yeah, so this, there were two guys who were admitted to a psychiatric hospital.
Right.
And then they were discharged on the same day. One went back home to a very common standard African family. They're not rich, but they are not too poor. And this guy went to a very affluent, rich family. And that's the basics of the story. So within 6 months, the guy who went into a very rich home came back into hospital because he relapsed. And the guy who went to a very basic standard African background survived recovered for a long period of time. So I just want to know what actually was the factor that led to this guy coming back into hospital.
I think there may be love, with where the poor man went. They don't have riches, but the love was there, the support was there. Whereas the affluent person, they may have wealth, but there was nobody to support him. That's what I'm thinking. I may be wrong.
No, Grace, you are really right. Because in a very typical home, when somebody is recovering or healing is taking place, they need you as a family to adapt to him. You don't force him to adapt to you. So there was love, there was care, everything was common, was okay, and he felt okay to be mad a little bit or to be sad a little bit, but he didn't make any fuss, Whereas the guy who went to this affluent background, there was too much pressure put on him. He need to behave in this way when visitors are coming. In fact, sometimes they will hide him away because they don't want their rich friends to know that they have a child who has got a mental health problem. And these things, this story actually resonates well with a lot of us here, So you just need to search within yourself to see what else do you need to do, because healing can actually continue to happen if the environment is actually focused on that healing. If the environment is something that is also adding to the challenges, believe me, that patient is going to relapse. It doesn't matter whether it's a mental health problem or with cancer, with any other illness. You need people to feel accommodated, accepted, loved, and cared for. So on that note, I would like to leave you with, again, it's just about what are your values? What are the views or beliefs around illness in your family? If you don't want to do it, that's fine, but it'll be good for us to really sit and look, what do we value around? What do we say when somebody has got diabetes in our family? What do we know about it, or mental health issues? So please, so that next week we look at that and see what you guys will bring. But on that note, I want to say thank you very much. It's been a lovely, lovely time together with you guys, and look after your mental well-being. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Yeah, before everybody leaves, I just wanted to find out whether Victor, do you have any updates for us? Thank you for your word, James.
Eva, you've already said what I was going to say. So.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Next week, we have our Zero Tolerance conference on Thursday. So I'll send out the information for that. Please share it out with your friends. But thank you for your presence today, and thank you for a rich conversation. And let's have a brilliant weekend and a brilliant week.